Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Mercedes and this is the Frugal Life with Mercedes. Today I am going to do another cook with me. So tonight we are having hamburger helper, and it is a cheesy hash browns. Now I am going to use this pot instead of a pan, and that's simply because my pans are very shallow. So once you put in the milk and the water and all that, then it doesn't really leave a lot of room. So I will be cooking it in a pot today. And I've never had this hamburger helper before, so I'm really excited about it. Instead of using hamburger, because it calls for a pound of hamburger, I am going to use bacon. I thought that the bacon and the hash browns would be really tasty together. And it also calls for butter, but there is bacon grease in here that I will use instead. So I figured I would just chat with you guys while I cook this. So I'm just going to start getting everything mixed in here. And I wanted to say I had made that video over the weekend of Mark and I cooking. And you guys really seemed to like that video. I'm really glad. Now I realized after I made the video and after I edited that I had said I was going to tell you guys a story about my parents' dogs. I don't know if any of you guys noticed that, but I had forgotten to tell that story. So basically on Saturday I went and visited my parents. And when I go to visit my parents, I like to bring bread that's kind of stale, and I feed it to the chickens. Now, right now, my parents mostly have roosters. So these roosters were born last year to the chickens that live at my parents' house. So they pretty much all ended up being roosters. I'm trying to think. So there's Biscuit, which is a girl. There's Banner, who we thought was a rooster but ended up being a girl. And then there's Tiffany and Brittany, which ended up being roosters. And then there's a rooster named Duncan. And some of the chickens and roosters don't have names. There's a couple other ones. Oh, there's Trixie. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but I had a rooster named Jamie, and he passed away last fall. And his girlfriend was Trixie. The other chickens were not, didn't really like him that much. But he was also kind of gimpy. My parents, somebody had given him to my parents, and when they got him, he was like, his feet were kind of distorted and he just seemed kind of, slow. So my parents adopted him from somebody, and he kind of just lived out the rest of his life at my parents' house. But Trixie was his girlfriend, so she would always, we actually had to have him in a special, a big cage, because the other rooster, Duncan, would attack him and wouldn't let him eat and all that kind of stuff. So for his own safety, we had him separated, but Trixie would come and sit by his cage, and she really seemed to like him a lot. But anyway, so I was feeding the chickens and the roosters, which I do quite frequently. And when I tell you that, guys, this, I am going to cut up an onion to add to my hamburger helper. So I'm out there feeding the chickens and roosters, and my parents' dogs come outside to go to the bathroom. And the one dog, George, which is the big dog, he actually, so I'm throwing them out bread, and he started eating big chunks of the bread. And I was like, George, drop that. And then he just basically swallowed the bread whole and scarfed it down. and they have a doggy door, and then him and the little one, Gus, ran in the house like they had gotten caught, and it was pretty funny. And then also at my parents' house, they have some cats, and they did have a bunny. But the bunny actually passed away over the winter. So that was kind of sad, but her name was Lorelei. And I think my parents were her third or fourth owner. It was just one of those situations where somebody had bought her for their kids, and then they were, doing all the work, and then they had given it to somebody from church, and then, I don't really know all the details, but my parents were Lorelei's third or fourth owner. It was just, she was a big French Lops bunny. She was a huge bunny and just a very, very sweet girl. And she would try to hop in your arms, and whenever I would come over, she knew that I always brought her carrots and different things. And so she always was very excited to see me. So my parents have lots of animals. So they've got George, which is a, what is he? Trying to think. He's a Saint Bernard mix, so he is brown and white with spots, and he's just huge, but his fur is very short. So he's a Saint Bernard mix, and then the other dog, Gus, is a Beagle mix. And so a lady my dad worked with, her dog had puppies, and she sent pictures of the puppies to my dad, knowing that he's got all these kids at home. And, he's like, we don't need another dog. And then, of course, my dad ended up adopting one of the puppies. And how that all went down was the dogs that we had when I was a girl and a teenager, one of them had passed away, and she was very old, and she had like a skin condition. I can't remember what it's called, and poor little thing was just, of course my parents, tried to make her comfortable and all that kind of stuff, and she passed away. So then they had another dog named Brody, which was a, what was he? He was a Border Collie mix, but he was huge. He was a huge, huge dog. I'm not really sure what he was mixed with, but his coloring was Border Collie, and he was just a really amazing dog. And but he was huge. And Haley, the girl dog that had passed away, she was also a Border Collie mix, but she was small framed like a regular Border Collie. She's just beautiful, beautiful, good dog. We always had really good dogs. So when Haley passed away, my dad ended up adopting Gus. And then after that, my parents were looking for another big dog. My parents really like big dogs. So they had gone to the animal shelter and they found George. And so at one point they had 3 dogs. They had George, Gus, and Brody. And then Brody passed away, and he actually was very, very old. I want to say he was like 17 or 18, very old. And he also had Lyme's disease for a long time. And there was a thing where he had a benign tumor on his paw. And there was all this drama with the vet and like wanting to amputate his leg and all this kind of stuff. And then my dad took him for a second opinion and, all this kind of stuff. But we always had really good dogs and good luck with dogs. But anyway, so now they have Gus and George, and they're very good boys. And when I say us, I mean the whole family, because even though they're not my dogs, we really consider them the family dogs, and we all really care about them and all that. And my parents just got chicks delivered. If you guys saw my video where I showed some of the chicks, I think that my parents got 11 new chicks. And here in the next few weeks, they're right now they're inside with the heat lamps and they're all together. And then here in the next couple of weeks, my dad will take them out to meet the other chickens and start getting them incorporated with the regular chickens and the roosters and all that kind of stuff. So that'll be nice. And then as far as cats, right now my parents have 3 cats. They have Clementine, which they've had since I was in high school. So, or maybe they got her when I was in college. Yeah, I think when I was a freshman in college, they got Clementine. Now, Clementine is a white cat, but over the years, she has some orange throughout her. But when we named her Clementine, she did not have orange, which was really funny. And we call her the queen of the front porch. My parents' driveway is not paved, and she likes to roll around in the dirt, and she, looks gray most of the time. And she just is in charge. And my parents' dog George, when they first got him, he was not too keen on cats. So they got him, I think he was maybe a year old, maybe a little less than a year old. So we don't know, when you adopt from the shelter, you don't always know what home environment those animals came from. So I'm not sure if he had a bad experience with a cat or just didn't like them. But our other 2 dogs never had an issue with cats. But the other 2 cats would run from George and he would chase them. Clementine, now she's got gusto. She would just stand her ground. She would just stand there like this. And he didn't know what to do because he's like, oh, she's not running. I can't chase her if she's not running. So they've all come to terms with each other and all get along pretty well. So that's Clementine. And then there's another cat, Sherman. And my parents actually have had him since I was in high school. And when my parents adopted him, a barn cat had kittens. And we have a thing called, I don't know if you guys have this by you, but we have a thing called the Valley Trader. And it's basically a free newspaper. And you put in there news of the community, the surrounding communities, and then people will also buy, sell, and trade things in there. Things and animals and services and all that kind of stuff. So my parents were looking for some new cats, and they saw in there that there was some kittens. So my parents went with the intention to get 1 kitten, and my understanding was that there were 2 cats left, and they were both orange cats, so my parents adopted both of them, and so it was Sherman and Eva, his sister, and Eva has since passed away, but Sherman is still around, the man of the front porch, and Sherman kind of just comes and goes as he wants. My parents' cats are not super cuddly cats. And I find, at least from my experience, the cats that I've been around, they're not super cuddly. If you pet them, they're happy, but they don't want to come sleep with you or anything like that, which is fine. And my parents are very much whatever the animals want to do, we just kind of respect their boundaries, and nobody's ever gotten hurt by any of the dogs or the cats or the chickens, so. And then we have Maya. So my sister had a cat. I can't remember her name because it was so long ago. She had a cat and it ran away and it just never came back. And so my parents got my sister a new cat named Maya, and Maya is not very, very friendly. And then there's another cat that's a neighbor's cat, and we call her not Maya because she looks just like Maya, but it's not her. And actually, when I was over there on Saturday, I had a little boy. I was on my parents' front porch cleaning out the chest freezer, and a little boy came up the driveway, and I don't know who he is, and he was like, "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" And I was like, "Sure." And he's like, "Have you seen this cat?" And I was like, "Well, that looks like this cat, but she lives here." And I said, "Well, let me go get my mom." So I got my mom, and my mom goes, "That's not Maya." And she said, "Yeah, your cat hangs out here all the time, but we didn't know where she belonged, blah, blah, blah. We've got cats, and, she hangs out here on the front porch with the other cats sometimes." And so she said, like, "We have seen that cat, and, you can come by any time and see if she's here. That's not a problem." So, and then he showed a picture of another cat, and my mom said she had never seen that cat. But the other thing is, too, the next door neighbor has cats. So, you just never know with these animals. That's for sure. And the cats come and go, and they're inside outside cats. So that's just kind of how we've always done it. And we have a fenced in yard, and the dogs have a doggy door, so they go in and out as they want, and the chickens have their own space, and it all seems to really work out, that's for sure. But I always grew up with a lot of animals. I personally don't have any animals. For a little while I had a couple of cats. But most of the places that I've lived, you can't have pets, because when you rent, at least around where I live, you can't have animals at all. So, but I do enjoy animals. It's more like I enjoy other people's animals. But again, that's also because of the places that I've lived. Even if I wanted a dog or a cat, I can't really have one. But I know when I lived with my parents, my dad was talking about them getting a goat. And my dad knows I'm really into, like, making things. Like, I do canning, and I do knitting, and all that kind of stuff. So my dad was talking about them getting a goat or two. And then I could make homemade goat soap, like from their milk goat soap. So I'm not really sure if they are going to get goats or not, but it's something that they always talk about. And so those are the benefits of living in the country, which my parents do. So that's nice. And I was actually joking with my dad that I really want a duck. I've always wanted a duck. So I said, well, we can get a duck, and the duck can just live with the chickens, and maybe it'll believe it's a chicken. And I said, and it can be my baby. And I said, it can sleep with me. And my dad's like, well, ducks are like chickens. They'll just go to the bathroom wherever. And I was like, well, yeah. And so, it's always eventful at my parents' house. And as you guys know, I grew up with 7 brothers and sisters. So we always had dogs and cats. And also my dad has a bunch of fish. He's a fish aficionado. So I grew up with a 100-gallon tank in the kitchen, in the dining room. And my dad has tanks in the basement. We've had salt water and fresh water. At one point we had geckos. We've had turtles. I don't know if you guys know this, but if you go to like a fair or a carnival, and sometimes they hand out turtles as prizes, in some states it's illegal to sell turtles of a certain size, like they're too small, and it has something to do with salmonella, because they can carry salmonella being that small. I don't really understand all the logistics, but I had a boyfriend in high school who somehow got 4 turtles, him and his friend did, and they were like, well, what do we do with these turtles? Because they had won them at a fair or a carnival, or it was something like that, or somebody they knew had won them. And so my parents actually took the 4 turtles. They were red-eared sliders, And so for many, many years, we had 4 turtles in a huge tank in our basement. And so that's what I'm used to. We had birds at one point. I think we had parakeets. So my parents are definitely animal lovers, that's for sure. And when I was really little, I actually lived with my grandparent, well, my grandpa for a while. So my grandmother had passed away when I was about 5 or 6. I guess I would have been 5. And we moved in with my grandpa when I was little. And there was only the 4 of us then. My older sister, me, and my 2 brothers. And my grandpa actually lived on a farm. I forget how many acres he has, but I want to say he's got 100 acres or something crazy like that. And he always had 10 dogs, chickens. I think the most cats he ever had was like 20 cats, 22 cats, but they were mostly like barn cats. And my grandmother that had passed away, she actually was a huge animal lover, and she really liked animals a lot more than she liked people. So growing up, you'd go to my grandmother's house, and you'd be sitting at the dining room table, and it would literally, so everybody would be sitting, and you'd have dogs and cats surrounding the table. And I grew up, at least at my grandmother's house, that was normal. And the cats and the dogs would just kind of come and go as they want. And my grandparents had a pond, and the dogs would swim in the pond. And I remember my grandmother had a dog that had, like, I think it was cataracts, or she had she was just a very, very old dog. And my grandmother would put in these drops in her eyes every day. And this dog was basically blind. And so they'd have to, navigate her around. And then when my grandmother passed away, my uncle, who lived at the house too, he actually started taking care of her eye drops. And that dog was Beatrice. And I still remember from when I was little. And my grandpa had a dog named Henry, which was a little Dachshund, and that was his companion. So my grandfather, even though he had all these dogs and cats, he would always have one dog that was his, special companion. So he had a dog named Leonard, and that was a golden retriever. And so I think Leonard was his companion. And then after Leonard passed away, he got Henry, and Henry was a little Dachshund. And then Henry actually got ran over by a car. My grandparents lived, like I said, in this they lived in this teeny tiny little town. And even still today, all these years later, the town is teeny tiny. Everybody knows tiny, tiny town in Ohio. And, but it was like a busy country road, people go really fast down there. And they had a fenced in yard, but he somehow got out of the yard, and they found him, and it was just, it was so sad. I remember that because I was very little. And then my grandpa got a dog named, what was the next one's name? Cinnamon. Cinnamon was his next dog's name. And he had Cinnamon up until he passed away. And so my grandfather passed away when I was in my early 20s. I want to say I was 22. Yeah, I was 22 when my grandpa passed away. And his dog was Cinnamon. That was his newest companion. And then Cinnamon outlived him, so he passed away, and I think Cinnamon lived another year. So my grandfather passed away from lung cancer. And then his dog, about a year after he died, got cancer. And so, and my grandpa had remarried too. That's something else that I hadn't mentioned. My grandpa had remarried, and so his new wife, my grandmother, she took care of all the dogs, and she still lives at the farm. And so we call it a farm, but it never really, I think it probably was a farm maybe way back in the day, but my grandpa and grandma bought it in the 60s when they first got married and raised their 6 children there. And I spent a lot of time there as a child, and my step-grandmother still lives there. But I think she only has one dog. So my original grandmother, she had a sister named Aunt Becky. It was Aunt Becky. And Aunt Becky outlived my grandmother by a lot of years. And when she had to be put into a nursing home, she had a little dog named Muffin. And so my grandpa and my step-grandma took Muffin, and Muffin is still living, and she lives with my grandmother. So, and my grandmother, I think, has 6 cats, but she's really into Siamese cats. So she's got a couple of Siamese and some other cats, but only the one dog. So all the animals kind of lived their lives, and then I don't But she told me that I think the 2 Siamese that she has, she did go and get those. I don't know if she rescued them or purchased them from a breeder. That part I really don't know. But I know she intentionally got those, and then the other cats, they just kind of showed up on the property, and so they're hers now. And so I grew up around a lot of animals, and I really do like animals. I just happen to not have any. But when I want my animal fixed, I go over to my parents' house, and like I said, they've got a bunch of animals, and that's really nice. And my clients all have animals as well. I've always worked with clients with animals. So, and I'm not allergic to animals, but I did have a client who had a Siamese cat, and his Siamese cat always made me sneeze. But my mother is very, very allergic to cats. One of my sisters is really allergic to cats, and my grandmother, my mother's mother, was very allergic to cats and dogs. And 2 of my sisters have asthma. My mother has asthma, but I've somehow I don't have any. I have some allergies now that I'm a little bit older, like the pollen. Of course, there's a lot of pollen here where I live, and so sometimes if you guys will hear me out, be like, this is because of the pollen. But I think I'm only allergic to Siamese cats, because it's like if another cat sits on my lap, I'm fine. But if a Siamese cat sits on my lap, then my nose gets very itchy and I start to sneeze. But luckily I don't have asthma, so although most of the people in my family do, and most of them are allergic to cats, but I still grew up around cats, and my mom always loved them and all that kind of stuff. So, but my food is almost done cooking, and I'm going to show it to you guys. But I know that you guys really seem to enjoy hearing stories about my life and my childhood and just getting to know me. And honestly, guys, this is really out of my comfort zone. I mean, I can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, which you guys know if you've been with me for a while, I'm very chatty. So, but it's hard on a channel and on videos, because I'm always like, well, what if no one's interested in what I have to say? But you guys seem to really like these kind of videos, and you really can get to know me and get to know my life experiences and get to know things about me, versus you don't really get to see that when I'm showing you shopping hauls or talking about my debt-free journey and different things like that. So, and I did get a request for a get ready with me video, so I'm gonna work on that. Honestly, most days, so this is what I do. At night, I make sure I have a work bag that's got all my work stuff in it, and I make sure that's all ready to go. And then I set out my clothes and I put them on top of my dresser. So then when I wake up in the morning, I literally get ready in 10 minutes. I get out of bed, I use the bathroom, I put in my contacts, I put my hair in a bun, I put the clothes on that I picked out, I grab my lunch from the fridge, and I walk out the door. That is 99.99999% of the time what I do. But occasionally on Saturdays and Sundays, I will put on makeup, I'll do my hair, I'll dress up a little bit, depending upon what I'm doing that day. So, but I did get a request for that, and so I really appreciate when you guys make requests, and so I'm going to see what I can do about that. And something else I was thinking about is, like, I've been a care provider for a really long time, so I thought that maybe I could give tips and tricks for care providers, or like somebody, if you work in someone's home. Like, I always have my work bag, and I can show you guys what I keep in my work bag so that I'm always prepared for any situation, because once I'm with my client, I can't leave. So if, you know, I get a headache or something like that, like, obviously if I'm sick I can leave, but you know, you want to have things on hand, or a phone charger, or different things like that, just have on hand. So I thought that I would show you guys my work bag as a care provider, and maybe talk about my work as a care provider. And again, I'm going to have to talk kind of in code with certain things, because I have to protect the identity of my clients, but I could kind of tell you like what I do day to day, and how I got started in it and all that kind of stuff, and I hope that you guys would enjoy that. So the food is just about done, and when it's completely done, I will show you guys the finished product. Here is the food all done. So this is what I will be eating, and then this is left over for Mark. And of course we've got grapes and bananas and yogurts, and we've got celery and all sorts of different fruits and vegetables that we can pair with this. So yes, I think that it turned out very good. Okay guys, so that was a cook with me. As you guys know, with me, it's mostly just putting stuff in a pot or a pan and then just chit-chatting with you guys. So I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I appreciate all of you guys watching, and I appreciate your guys' video requests and all that kind of stuff. And I just wanted to say thank you. I cannot express how grateful I am for you guys. I started my YouTube channel, excuse me, as a creative outlet with no expectations, and you guys are amazing, and you guys make me want to make these videos, and you guys are just so sweet and so kind and so tender to me, and so thank you guys so much. Please consider subscribing if you are not subscribed, and I have an Instagram, The Frugal Life with Mercedes, and over there you'll see pictures of my personal life. You'll see my mom and my sisters commenting on my posts, and you can also find Mark over there too. He sells cars, and he makes funny videos about different cars that he sells and different things. So I actually will put Mark's Instagram in the description box below. And until next time guys, bye.